Do you ever thought about what happens, if something ever happens to you? You ain't got no sons, man. Who's gonna keep the family name going? Raymond had heard enough of that kind of talk. The snow had started falling early that year, dusting the cracked sidewalks and rusted mailboxes of East Jefferson Avenue with an almost deceptive peace. For Raymond Mason, it was just another reminder that he'd made it through another year. One more winter without Elizabeth. Raymond had once been the kind of man Detroit respected. In the late 90s, he'd built Mason Auto Parts and Repairs, a thriving small chain that serviced most of the East Side taxi fleets. His hands were always blackened with oil, his smile bright, his word solid. Customers said, "If Ray fixes your car, it'll last longer than you do." He lived in a neat two-story brick house near Grosse Pointe with his two daughters, Cosy, 14, quiet and sharp-eyed, and Lace, 17, all laughter and fire like her late mother. Elizabeth Mason had died of breast cancer 5 years earlier, and Raymond never remarried. Every picture of her still sat exactly where she'd left it, above the mantel, smiling in her nurse's uniform, frozen in better times. But grief is strange. It doesn't always break a man. Sometimes it hollows him out. Raymond's brothers, Philip and Derek, saw that hollow space as opportunity. They had always been around. Family dinners, barbecues, birthdays. But where Raymond was steady and generous, Philip was slick-tongued and impatient. Derek, the youngest, was quieter, always following Philip's lead. Both had worked briefly for Raymond at the shop before being fired for skimming cash from the till. Raymond had never told anyone the full story. He just said they weren't built for business life. That was the polite version he always shared. By 2005, Raymond's company had expanded to 3 locations, and rumors swirled that he was worth over $2 million, mostly in property and equipment. Philip and Derek, meanwhile, were broke, hustling used car deals, and Philip's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, but you know how the world works. They'll marry, change their names. That Mason name will die with you." Raymond stood up, his patience thinning. "Then let it die," he said. "I'd rather that than have it in the wrong hands." Philip left that night, but something dark followed him out into the snow. Over the next few months, strange things began happening. A rock through the garage window. A threatening note scrawled on Raymond's office door. "You can't protect them forever." He reported it once to police, who chalked it up to vandals. Then Cosy began noticing a black sedan parked across from the house some nights. Once, Leigh said she saw someone following her from school. Raymond became paranoid. He installed new locks, added security cameras, and kept a shotgun behind the bedroom door. But he had no idea that the danger wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from the same bloodline he'd once trusted. By early 2008, Philip's gambling debts had caught up with him. A man named Big Lou Carver, a loan shark from Hamtramck, started pressing him for repayment. Philip promised he had a plan, a family inheritance soon to come. That was when he convinced Derek that the only way out was through Raymond. "He's got insurance, savings, property. The girls are the only thing between us and that money," Philip said. "Are you saying we should hurt them?" Derek asked, his voice trembling. "Not hurt. Just remove the obstacle. Clean. Quick. Nobody traces nothing." Derek didn't answer right away. But that night, he dreamed of blood in the snow. Lace turned 17 in April 2008. The Masons threw a small backyard party. Family, friends, barbecue smoke, Motown music playing soft in the background. Even Philip and Derek were there, smiling, laughing, acting like brothers again. That night, when everyone had left, Raymond sat alone on the porch, watching the girls chase each other through the yard. For a moment, life almost felt normal again. He didn't know it was the last truly peaceful night he'd ever have. It had been unusually hot that July, the kind of heat that clung to your skin like guilt. The hum of window units filled Raymond Mason's neighborhood, and even the nights felt heavy. He'd been losing sleep for weeks, strange calls that went silent when answered, motion alerts from the new cameras that showed nothing but shadows, and that same black sedan that kept appearing on random corners near his block. Raymond tried to stay calm for Cosy and Lace. They were his world. Lace had just been accepted to Michigan State, the first Mason to get into college. Cosy, quiet and curious, wanted to follow her sister into medicine, just like Mom. But beneath the celebration, Raymond couldn't shake the dread that something or someone was closing in. On July 26th, a Saturday, Philip called. His tone was unusually warm. "Ray, listen, me and Derek are grilling tonight. Come through. Bring the girls. We ain't all hung out in a while." Raymond hesitated. He'd been trying to rebuild trust, to believe his brothers could still be family. Maybe he thought this was a peace offering. Against his gut feeling, he agreed. By evening, the three Masons sat behind Philip's small rented duplex near 7 Mile, the smell of charcoal mixing with gasoline fumes from the nearby alley. Philip poured whiskey like water, slapping his brothers on the back, laughing too loud. Derek sat mostly silent, staring into the fire pit. When Raymond got up to leave, Philip grabbed his arm. "Hey man, we should talk business soon," he said, his eyes narrowing. "About what?" "About future plans, just in case something happens to you. You know I'd look out for the girls." Raymond's jaw tightened. "They don't need looking out for. Not from you." Philip smirked, his face twisting into something colder. "Careful, Ray. You act like we ain't blood." Raymond walked away without another word. It was the last time they'd speak face to face as brothers. Then he saw it, a small smear of blood on the doorframe. Within an hour, police had arrived. There were no signs of forced entry. The only prints found belonged to the family and 2 unidentified partials that couldn't be matched to anyone in the system. At first, investigators suspected a runaway case, teenage girls leaving home together. But that theory collapsed within a day. Lace's car, phone, and purse were still in the driveway. Cosy's school laptop was still charging on her desk. It was as if the girls had simply vanished. Detective Marcia Holden, a 42-year-old veteran with Detroit PD's Major Crimes Unit, was assigned to the case. She'd seen her share of tragedies, domestic homicides, drug hits, gang revenge killings, but something about this one felt different. The father wasn't lying, she told her partner, Detective Green, as they left the Mason home. That man's grieving like somebody who already knows what happened. He ain't hiding nothing. They started digging into the family's background, phone records, and finances. Everything looked clean, except one thing: frequent phone calls from Philip Mason over the past few weeks. Dozens of them at odd hours. When they brought Philip in for questioning, he played the role of the concerned uncle flawlessly. "The girls were like my own," he said, dabbing fake tears with a tissue. "I told Ray to be careful. He's too trusting, you know." But Holden didn't buy it. "Where were you Monday night around 8:30? She asked. Philip blinked. "Home. Watching the game. Asked my brother Derek. He was with me." Derek, when called in separately, confirmed the story almost word for word. Too perfect. Holden leaned back in her chair. "Funny thing," she said. "There wasn't any game on Monday night." Derek's face went pale. 2 days later, the case cracked open. A city sanitation worker reported finding a burned handbag near an industrial dumpster in southwest Detroit. Inside were 2 partially melted student IDs, Cosy Mason and Lace Mason. Lab tests confirmed blood traces on the fabric, the same blood type as the girls. Detectives revisited Philip's duplex. In the garage, they found a half-empty gas can, matching the residue on the burned bag. They also found boot prints consistent with one from the Mason home. When questioned again, Philip grew defensive. "You got no proof I did anything. You know how many people use gas cans?" he shouted. But it wasn't proof they needed, it was time. Holden knew that pressure breaks people faster than evidence. She turned her attention to Derek. It took 8 hours in the interrogation room before Derek finally broke. Head down, voice trembling, he whispered, "It was supposed to be a scare. Just a scare, not this." According to Derek's statement, Philip had planned to kidnap the girls, keep them hidden until Raymond signed over the business, then release them unharmed. But things spiraled when Cosy tried to escape. "She fought him," Derek said. "She screamed. He hit her. Then Lace jumped in. And he just lost it." By the time Derek pulled Philip off them, it was too late. They buried the bodies near a drainage field off Grosbeck Highway, miles outside the city. When officers reached the site, they found shallow graves, and the Masons' worst nightmare has been made real. On August 3, 2008, Philip Mason was arrested on 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of justice. When Raymond saw the headline on TV, Uncle charged in double murder of Detroit teen sisters, he didn't cry. He just stared at the screen, unmoving, until Detective Holden placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "They'll never hurt anyone again," she said quietly. But Raymond only shook his head. "They already did," he whispered. The city had thawed, but grief clung to Raymond Mason like the rust that ate away at the frame of an old car, slowly, completely, and without mercy. The trial of Philip and Derek Mason began on a gray Monday morning in Wayne County Circuit Court. The courthouse steps were lined with news vans, microphones, and cameras flashing like fireworks. The headline read, "Brothers accused of murdering nieces for inheritance, Detroit's darkest family feud." Raymond arrived wearing a black suit and the same tie he'd worn at Elizabeth's funeral. His eyes were hollow, his hands shaking. In a gallery behind him sat members of the community, neighbors, friends, even former employees, people who had watched his family rise, fall, and now burn before their eyes. Assistant District Attorney Lydia Norcross, known for her sharp mind and colder tone, stood before the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "this is not a story about strangers. It's a story about blood, about 2 men who let greed drown out family, love, and humanity. Philip Mason didn't just kill for money. He killed to erase the very people who reminded him he didn't earn it." The defense countered weakly, claiming the brothers were victims of circumstance, that Derek had been coerced and Philip never intended harm. But the weight of Derek's recorded confession, combined with forensic evidence, made that defense crumble before it even began. Detective Marcia Holden took the stand. Calm, precise, her testimony detailed the timeline of the investigation. The phone records, the gas can, the burned handbag, the matching footprints, and Derek's signed statement. She projected photos of the crime scene, 2 shallow graves surrounded by thawing snow, and the courtroom fell silent. Raymond couldn't look. When the prosecutor asked her, "Detective, what was Philip Mason's demeanor during arrest?" Holden replied simply, calm, almost relieved. The gallery murmured. It was the first hint that maybe, just maybe, something deeper was at play. On the 5th day, Derek Mason took the stand under a plea deal. He'd agreed to testify against his brother in exchange for a reduced sentence. He looked thinner, unshaven, eyes bloodshot. When asked to recount the night of July 28th, his voice broke repeatedly. "He told me it'd be easy," Derek said. "He said we'd just make the old man scared enough to sign papers." But when Lace fought back, he lost control. He kept shouting, "You always loved them more than me." He said that over and over. That line, "You always loved them more than me," hit Raymond like a knife. He remembered a Christmas in 1992 when Philip had stormed out after Raymond refused to lend him money. He remembered the bitterness in his brother's eyes back then. The resentment had never left. It had only aged, fermented, and turned lethal. Halfway through the trial, just as it seemed like the verdict was all but certain, something unexpected emerged. During cross-examination, the defense called a former employee of Mason Auto Parts, a man named Reggie Collins, who claimed Philip wasn't the only one with motive. According to Reggie, Raymond's will, which Philip had somehow obtained through a shared family lawyer, had been recently amended. The business, previously divided equally among his brothers and daughters, had been rewritten to completely cut Philip and Derek out. That revelation changed everything. The prosecutor, blindsided, asked Raymond to confirm the amendment. He did. "I changed it after I caught them stealing from the company years ago," Raymond said. "I wasn't going to reward betrayal." The defense jumped on it like wolves. "So you admit, Mr. Mason, that your brothers stood to lose everything after your death?" "Yes." "And you didn't tell them?" "No. I didn't owe them that." The courtroom buzzed. The motive, greed, had just found its fuel. But there was another layer coming, one no one saw coming. When Philip Mason finally took the stand, he didn't look like the man who'd been caught red-handed. His arrogance was gone. His voice was flat, almost weary. He didn't deny the killings anymore. He just told his version. "Have you ever worked your whole damn life being second best?" he asked the jury. Ray was the golden boy. Got the business, the girl, the family. Every time I messed up, Ma would say, "Why can't you be more like Raymond?" Well, I got tired of hearing that. He paused, his jaw tightening. When I found out he cut us out of his will, I snapped. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about making him feel what I felt my whole damn life, being empty. He turned toward Raymond in the gallery. "Now you know how it feels." Raymond's face crumpled. He wanted to stand, to shout, to curse him, but his body refused. Philip's words echoed in the courtroom like poison. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours. Philip Mason was found guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Derek Mason, under his plea deal, received 25 years to life, eligible for parole after 18. The judge's words were simple. This court hopes that someday, even behind bars, you find a humanity you traded for greed. Reporters surrounded Raymond as he left the courthouse. "Mr. Mason, do you feel justice was served?" one shouted. He didn't answer. He just kept walking until he reached his truck. Inside, the dashboard photo of Elizabeth and the girl smiled back at him, sun-faded but bright. He whispered, "It's over now, Liz." But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Because something in Philip's testimony, that cold, bitter calm, haunted him. And just weeks later, Raymond would discover that justice, like blood, sometimes runs in circles. The city had changed again, or maybe it was Raymond Mason who had. His once bustling auto business had been sold off piece by piece, and the house that once echoed with laughter now stood half empty. Only the ticking of the grandfather clock and the hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. People called him the man who lost everything. Reporters had stopped knocking, neighbors spoke in lower tones, and some even avoided him out of pity. He didn't blame them. But sometimes, late at night, he'd drive past the cemetery on Van Dyke Avenue, park by the fence, and stare at the twin headstones engraved with the names Cosy and Lace Mason. Every time, he'd whisper, "Daddy's still here. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." He didn't know what else to say anymore. It was a Tuesday morning when the letter came, plain envelope, no return address, postmarked from Jackson State Prison. Raymond hesitated before opening it, his fingers trembling. Inside was a single handwritten page, scrawled in rough, angry handwriting. "You think it's over, but you never knew the truth. Derek didn't tell you everything. Do you want justice? Come see me before I'm gone. Philip." He read it twice, then a third time. His stomach twisted. Philip's health had been deteriorating in prison. Word had spread that he'd been diagnosed with stage 4 liver failure. Maybe this was just another manipulation. But Raymond couldn't ignore it. He needed answers, closure, maybe even forgiveness. 3 days later, he drove 2 hours to the Jackson facility, the same gray fortress where both brothers were serving time. They met in a small visitation room divided by glass. Philip looked nothing like the man who'd once ruled a courtroom with arrogance. He was thinner, pale, his eyes sunken. The orange jumpsuit hung off his frame like it was wearing him instead. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Philip smirked weakly. "Didn't think you'd come, Ray. You said you had something to tell me," Raymond replied quietly. Philip leaned closer, his breath fogging the glass. "You ever wonder how we knew about that night? When you weren't home? When the girls were alone?" Raymond frowned. "You followed me." "You must have," Philip interrupted with a dry laugh that turned into a cough. "We didn't follow you. We were tipped off. Someone told us you'd be gone. Someone inside your circle." Raymond's pulse quickened. "Who?" Philip smiled faintly. "You already know." He slid an envelope to the edge of the partition. Inside was a photograph, grainy, black and white, printed from a security camera still. It showed Raymond's longtime shop manager, Leonard "Lenny" Briggs, standing beside Philip outside a diner just weeks before the murders. Raymond's voice dropped. "Lenny? My own foreman. He owed me money," Philip rasped. "Gambling. I told him I'd clear it if he helped me out. Told me when you'd be gone, where the spare key was, even turned off one of your cameras that night." Raymond's hands trembled so hard the photo slipped to the floor. "But it wasn't supposed to go like that," Philip continued. "You know that, right? I didn't plant it got out of hand. But your man, he's the one who let us in. For the first time in years, Raymond felt something other than grief, rage. Why are you telling me this now? He asked. Because I don't want him to walk free while I rot, Philip said. You wanted justice. Now you. Got it. He coughed again, blood streaking his lip. Guards rushed in, ending the visit. As they led him away, Philip turned one last time. Tell her I'm sorry, he whispered. Tell us I never meant to take them. That was the last time Raymond ever saw his brother alive. The following week, Raymond brought the photo and letter to Detective Holden, who by then had been promoted to lieutenant. She read it carefully, face expressionless. Are you sure this isn't a trick? She asked. I don't know, Raymond said. But if there's even a chance, I want it looked into. Holden reopened the case quietly. With a court order, her team re-examined the evidence logs. Sure enough, the night of the murders, the alarm system in Raymond's home had been manually disarmed, using the correct security code. That code was known only to Raymond, his daughters, and Lenny Briggs. When detectives questioned Lenny, he denied everything, until confronted with a photo and a subpoena for his financial records. Bank statements showed large cash deposits totaling $18,000 in a month after the murders, none of which could be traced to legitimate income. 2 weeks later, Leonard Briggs was arrested on charges of conspiracy, aiding and abetting, and obstruction of justice. In court, Briggs admitted to tipping off Philip about Raymond's whereabouts, claiming he didn't think they'd actually hurt anyone. He said Philip promised him $30,000 in exchange for access to the property. He got 12 years in prison. When a verdict was read, Raymond didn't even feel relief, just exhaustion. 3 months later, Philip Mason died in prison from liver failure. His final possession, a silver pocket watch that once belonged to their father, was mailed to Raymond through the warden's office. Inside the lid, scratched faintly, were the words, "It was never supposed to be them." Raymond kept the watch locked in a box beside Elizabeth's wedding ring. Time passed. The auto shops were gone. The name Mason faded from business directories, but around Detroit, people still remembered. Not the money, not the scandal, but the story of 2 innocent girls and a father who refused to stop seeking the truth. Detective Holden visited him once more before she retired. They sat on his porch as evening settled over the neighborhood. You did what most couldn't, Ray, she said. You faced it all head on. I didn't have a choice, he replied. But you know what's funny? Justice doesn't bring peace. Evil may silence voices, but it cannot erase their purpose. And with that, Raymond Mason finally found a reason to keep living. Not to rewrite the past, but to make sure it was never forgotten.